We're on the plaza right outside the Pfizer Arena, and look at this fella, Governor Doug Burgum. How are you?
I'm great, Scott. Great to be here. We probably wish we were going to a Bucks game tonight, but exciting stuff with the RNC in town.
We're hanging out at the Panther Arena. We're more hockey guys than
right next door here,
yeah,
UW.
Exactly right. So let's talk a little bit about the last 24 hours. I imagine you were sitting there waiting for your phone to ring. Walk us through the suspense.
Well, it was of course, the thing on our mind yesterday was, I think, with all of America, was how grateful we were that President Trump was alive. I mean, that was the thing. I mean, because there wouldn't be a convention this week. We'd have a nation in chaos and in mourning, and so we've just been, Catherine and I have been just focused on gratitude and on the divine providence that saved his life. I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, we were 1 millimeter away from, a complete catastrophe for our country, and obviously a tragedy for those individuals that were killed or seriously injured there. But it's that was what was really on our mind yesterday. And as you know, Scott, we didn't enter into this thing to, we weren't running for a cabinet position. We weren't running to be VP. It all kind of just organically happened. So honored to be included in the finals, and of course we. Yesterday I got a call from President Trump, and he opened it up by saying, "Mr. Secretary." So I took that. He's always been joking about that. He's been so kind to Catherine and I. He loves North Dakota, loves what we're doing there in our state, and it's been an honor for Catherine and I to tell the North Dakota story around the country.
So at least he got the news out of the way right away, right?
Yes, absolutely.
What were your emotions at that time?
Well, I think we went into this thing with a real sense of detachment, which is he's going to make the right choice that for the information that he has, and we've always said the most important thing was not about anything about us. The most important thing was that he gets back in the White House, because as governor of North Dakota, I've got a front row seat on the policies of the Biden administration and how it's hurting agriculture, how it's hurting national defense, our two big air bases, and certainly how it hurts oil and gas, and then baseload electricity. So the four biggest industries that we have, defense, agriculture, the whole coal industry, and oil and gas, those are all under assault right now by over 30 rules and mandates from the Biden administration. So I've really felt as governor that the next 4 years, the most important thing I could do as governor is to try to make sure that all of those full-on attacks against our economy went away. And I think we've certainly over the last year, we've changed the dialogue of the national debate about the presidential race going forward, that the economy, energy, national security, that's what we said on day one when we jumped in a year ago in June, and now that's what everybody's talking about.
Every minute of your time up till this point, and I'm sure now till November, has had an enormous ROI for North Dakota. I mean, we were on a national stage unlike anything that I can remember ever happening. What do you think the benefit from our governor spending time getting President Trump, besides the obvious on the policy, but just for a state you love, what do you think this has meant?
Well, I think the number of people I've met in America that said, I've never been to North Dakota. I mean, just from a tourism standpoint, where I've had a chance to personally invite people and come to North Dakota, tell them about all the great things we've got to see now, the excitement about the opening of the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library, which I'm sure President Trump will be at on July 4th of 2026 as we look forward to that. But really getting out, I mean, I think that North Dakota, we weren't just a blank spot in people's mind. I think there was a little bit of, I want to say this to the people back home, but nationally, we were so unknown. We were almost like a punchline, like what could come from North Dakota. And I think now part of what we're seeing is for our state is respect. People understand the important role we play in national defense, the role we play in economic or energy security, and the role we're playing in food security for our nation. And that's part of what I was out to do, is that we've got to just raise the profile of our state in this country, because we matter, what we do matters, and nobody in North Dakota should underestimate themselves or the impact that we're having on this country.
I have a fairly good source that is connected to Trump world, and said to me yesterday, I would not be surprised if Doug Burgum was the Secretary of Interior and Energy, and that there is a discussion going on about some whole of government efforts to have, cabinet members govern multiple agencies. Is that true?
Well, there's been a lot of talk, and we've, not to make too light of it, but among our own team, we've, over the last 6 months, we've started calling it cabinet bingo, because if you put down all the agencies that supposedly that I'd be able to contribute to with the skill set we have coming out of North Dakota, it gets to be a large number. And I think the reason why, it's been reported where they said, "Hey, Energy Secretary," and I was very clear with President Trump, when some time ago when I first met him, he's like, "You want to be Energy Secretary? You're like super smart on energy." And I said, "No, we're fighting the Biden administration right now in North Dakota, with our Attorney General Drew Wrigley, with all of our leadership across our cabinets, 30 different rules and mandates, and each one of those could be 800 to 1,400 pages long. And these are the things that are trying to, kill oil and gas and ag and energy. And some of these we're leading as a state, where we're the lead on those lawsuits. Some of them are joining other states. 0 of those are from the Department of Energy. 0. They're coming from U.S. Fish and Wildlife, EPA, Bureau of Land Management, Army Corps of Engineers. That's where the battles are. So as I've tried to explain to the press that's asked that question around the country, or anybody that's trying to think about the next administration, like, look, our problem in North Dakota is not the Department of Energy. They focus on Los Alamos Labs and the future of nuclear, which is really important. But it takes a whole of government approach. So what you're describing, whether it's the combining of agencies or an approach coming out of the White House, where we would say, look, if we're going to turn this around, and we're going to turn around the sanctions on Iran and on Russia, who are getting rich on their oil and gas sales right now. That's what's funding the wars against us. That's Commerce, that's Treasury, that's State Department. So all of a sudden now you need like a dozen or more agencies have got to turn 180-degree direction to solve the problem Joe Biden has created.
You mentioned earlier that you weren't in this for a cabinet position. You've been very clear about that. Obviously, you were a presidential candidate. You wanted the nomination. That didn't happen. Do you think differently now about not wanting a cabinet position?
I still think the key thing is impact, and whether that's in the private sector, because what's going on with AI right now, the artificial intelligence, we're in an arms race with China. We've got the lead right now in innovation and capability, but we're going to lose that lead if we don't have more electricity in our country. And I think we've got the Biden administration just completely focused on shutting down all the base load. We can't run our country on intermittent, meaning just solar and wind. We can't do that. I don't say, I hope it's not too late, but if Joe Biden's elected again, we're heading into 4 years of the Biden brownouts and blackouts, because there's not going to be enough power. Well, the whole time I was in technology, Scott, the technology industry used about 1% of the nation's electricity, and it could grow to 10%. And even with the vast number of telephones that people plug in every night, personal computers, all that, even though the computing was growing exponentially around the country, everything was getting more efficient. So we never used more than 1%. But now with AI, if you want to do a search on ChatGPT that's searching, like most of the written material in the world and coming back to you in 30 seconds with an original creation, that takes 10 times more power than just doing a simple Google search where you go out and try to find things that match on the internet. And those two things are world different. And that's today. That there's a new versions coming out of AI that'll be out in the next few months that people are just going to say, wow, how is that even possible? And it's free. Some of that's free, but it's not. We have to have the infrastructure. North Dakota could really benefit from this, because when there's not enough base load in the country, these big data centers that were like, hey, we want to be next to Washington, D.C. or New York near the population centers, because we're worried about the latency of the time between where the computing occurs and where it's being consumed. But you can't get a transmission line built in this country. You can't get permits for that. So all of those, the power consuming portion of that tech industry is going to come closer and closer to the source of electricity. They're coming to North Dakota. We've got a $1.2 billion project nearly completed in Ellendale, North Dakota, where the company's building 30 new homes in Ellendale to support a $1.2 billion construction project that's there in Ellendale.
It's going to transform rural America.
If you just said 5 years ago, hey, we've got a $1.2 billion project coming anywhere in North Dakota, people said, wow, that's one of the biggest ones ever. Now it's showing up in Ellendale, and not because of market demand for electricity, which we have in North Dakota.
I only have a minute left because you have to go lightning round. J.D. Vance, what do you think of the pick?
Well, JD is, of course, what's not to like about a guy with small town roots? Served our country in the military. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, right in his backyard. Those are states that President Trump has to win to be elected.
Will you be all in to the degree you have been to this point from now till November?
Well, I think yes, because we need President Trump. That's number one. But I've got to make sure. I've only got 151 days left as governor. I love that job, and I'm going to make sure that we're driving hard right through the tape. We got a lot less things we want to accomplish before I'm done.
Last question. It's quite obvious that the president and the first lady struck up a relationship as part of you being vetted for the vice president. Just talk about Doug and Catherine Burgum, husband and wife, and what this whole experience has meant for both of you.
Well, it's been incredible, and of course, I think people that know Catherine personally know she's an introvert, and campaigning's wouldn't be her first pick. But she's been so courageous to go out there and tell her story of her, struggles with addiction and her recovery. And President Trump, I think, is really moved by that. Of course, he lost a brother to the disease of addiction. He himself, doesn't ever have a drink. So he looks at her and says, "Wow, I mean, I appreciate the courage." And when we spoke yesterday, when I talked to him, he went on and on about Catherine and how fantastic she was, and how lucky we are to have her as First Lady of North Dakota. So we've got a real friendship there, and of course both of us so glad that he's alive, and so glad that he's the strength that he's got versus what Joe Biden has. I mean, what a difference for our country, and that's what we need right now.
Mr. Secretary, thanks for doing this.
Thank you, Scott.
Take care.